and welcome everyone for this bootcamp. And there's a lot of registrations up and a lot of demand for the bootcamp. So we have sold out in the first 4 hours. Now we completed 100 registrations. All tickets were all sold out, and then I had to increase the tickets. So we are here now with 400 plus registrations for this bootcamp, and we understand that there's a lot of interest to learn the AMPscript. So we have you here with all the content and the necessary tools for you with the eminent speakers. So let's get started with this bootcamp. Can somebody confirm if my audio and the screen share is all fine? Yes, okay, let's go. So this bootcamp is brought to you by myself and in collaboration with Tim Zira. So this wouldn't be possible without the support of Tim and all the other speakers. So we have laid out this bootcamp to cover all the fundamentals of the AMPscript and also different functions that you're going to use and the different use case scenarios. Now, this is for you and everybody who wants to learn about the AMPscript. As you may be already aware that AMPscript is a programming language that is proprietary to the Marketing Cloud. So Marketing Cloud has few other languages, development languages, SSJS, GTL. So AMPscript is also one of those which is highly used for personalization. So we're going to look at all the aspects of the personalization, how we can do that. And in this bootcamp, we're going to cover the basics and the best practices, and we will share the tips along the sessions. And we'll also see how to get started with the AMPscript. We understand that not everybody knows AMPscript, or not everybody is at the intermediate or the advanced level in Marketing Cloud. So this is for the beginners as well. So we are getting started slowly with the basics. It's all about how do we get started, which tools we use, which resources we use to ramp up. And we start from the basic personalization features, the basic functions, and we go over all the functions that are available, the advanced and complex functions as well. And along with that, we will also include all the use cases and some real-time scenarios. And you may also follow along. So if you already have access to the Marketing Cloud, try to create your own data extensions, and with the functions that we are discussing in each session, please try to build your own code. Please try to explore those functions, play around with those functions. So this is planned to be a 10-day bootcamp. So we are planning this as a weekly session every Tuesday, 12 p.m. mostly. Only for few sessions we'll have it at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So we have the first few sessions that are focused on all the functions and the use cases. And the next 5 sessions and probably more sessions as well, that will be more about the use cases. So we'll have different speakers who will present a real world scenario and demo how and go through how to implement that in the Marketing Cloud. And I'll take a pause here, and I would like to thank Tim for all the help and support he has provided. And I would like to give a short introduction of myself. I am Jyotsna Bitra. I go by the name JB, and I co-lead the marketers group in Phoenix and the marketing champion and the Golden Hoodie recipient. And I will let Tim introduce himself. Tim, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, JB. And this all is happening because of you. You're just amazing in all that you do. So yeah, I work for Cervello. So we're a Salesforce partner. We work with clients. We're in the platform, in the tool all the time, both in the test environment, the production environment. And just like JB said, not only utilizing these these capabilities, but building them out on a day-to-day basis, and just absolutely love AMPscript. So we're looking forward to helping support this initiative, both going through the functions and then also digging into those real use cases, and those final 5 sessions help support that. So really looking forward to it, and thank you again, JB, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Tim. And I thank you and thank everyone for taking time. I know for some it's the work time and for some it's the night time and we're all at different time zones. And thanks for taking time and attending this session. So we have been trying since the last few weeks, I should say few months, to give you the best content. And we are coming up with the best speakers and the best use cases. And I'm sure you will definitely get benefit out of it. So here we are with all our speakers for the first 5 sessions. So the first 2 sessions I and Tim are going to lead. And the next session, Sandesh is going to present on some of the functions. And we have Michelle and Tabuhi and Cameroon. They're all gonna take each function and each function category, and then with the use case cover what each function does in detail. So we have a lot to explore over the next few sessions. And make sure that you register to all the sessions in the bootcamp. These are all individual sessions, so you need to register to all of this individually. So once you register, you will get all the notifications when if any time changes or when the bootcamp is about to start, all the notification you will get. So these sessions are all recorded and they will be uploaded to the YouTube channel, Trailblazing Together. And any questions you have during the session, please feel free to add them in the chat. So at the end of the session, we will try to answer them, as many as possible. And if there are any questions that are unanswered, so I do have the Slack channel included here in the bottom. So this is the Slack channel that we have for the MC Learning Camp, where we have conducted all the previous boot camps, the certification boot camps and everything. So we have all the collaboration going through the Slack channel. So any questions or any notifications or any feedback that you would like to pass on regarding these sessions, please update them on the Slack channel and also on Twitter and on LinkedIn. So this is the YouTube channel Trailblazing Together, and on Twitter the handle is MC Learning Camp, and this is the Slack channel link. So you can, if you're not already part of the channel, please join the group so you will get all the updates. And this is how the bootcamp is laid out. So we have the session every Tuesday starting today, and we are planning this as a 10-day bootcamp, but this can probably increase to 12-day or 15-day depending on the use cases. The more use cases that we get, we want to give you all the details, all the information. We want to help you with all the real world scenarios that we can think of. So we are working on getting more speakers and more use cases. So the first 5 sessions are focused on the functions. So we'll go over the conceptual categories of these functions and with a simple use case. And the next set of 5 sessions would be more about the use case, the real world scenario, and how do we go and implement that in the Marketing Cloud instance. So in this session, we're going to look at the AMPscript overview. And if you are trying to learn AMPscript for the first time, we're also going to share a few tools and resources and diving into the AMPscript the basics, and then we start with the syntax, the variables, the functions, the function categories, what are all available. So, and also we'll have a brief demo. So AMPscript, as I have mentioned before, it's the Marketing Cloud's proprietary server-side scripting language. So we do have other languages that we use within the Marketing Cloud, the server-side JavaScript and the GTL WS proxy, which are less used. But SSJS and AMPscript are the ones that are most frequently used. So this AMPscript is used within the emails and within the landing pages. When we create the cloud pages, if you want to personalize, we can include the AMPscript in there. And also in the SMS messages and the push messages, we can include the AMPscript. So why do we use the AMPscript? This is to personalize the content that goes within the email, and also to include some logic within the email content. So if you are already aware of the Marketing Cloud personalization, you are creating the emails and you are including the personalization aspects within the email, you might be already aware of the personalization methods that we do in the email studio. One is the dynamic content. The dynamic content block, we just use it to set some criteria, and depending on the criteria, the specific content will be rendered in the email. That is one way. And the other way is to use the personalization strings, which are available within the email studio itself. And the next one is using the AMPscript. And AMPscript, if you are trying to learn for the first time, you don't need to be overwhelmed, or you don't need to think that this is some type of coding and may not be easy to learn. But AMPscript is very easy to learn. It has simple syntax and easy to understand, easy to learn. All we need to know is the syntax and the different functions that are available in the AMPscript library. So once we know the syntax, how to write each, like setting the variables, or how to call the functions, or how to write the comments, if we are well aware of the syntax and all the functions that are available within the library, then we are good to go. So it doesn't need complex coding skills. If you already know other scripting languages or any other programming languages, it's good. And even if you don't know, no need to worry. So it's easy. And AMPscript is a procedural language, and it's processed top down. So the order in which you set or you declare the variables, they will be processed in the order. And the content, the logic will be executed at the time of rendering the email or the cloud page. And where we use the AMPscript is the first basic area is the personalization. When we want to include some personalized content in the email, that's where we use the AMPscript. And also when the data is not clean and we want to clean the data, let's say the first name, when the user inputs the first name in not in a proper case or in all uppercase or lowercase, so you want to output the data in a clean and presentable format, we can use those the functions within the AMPscript. And it can also be used to query the data that is already existing in the data extensions, and also include some logic depending on the data value present. So there are multiple reasons why we use AMPscript within the email or the landing page, or sometimes in the exclusion scripts as well. Exclusion scripts are something that we use, that we set while sending an email. So while sending an email, we don't want to send the email to some domain names or some email addresses, or based on some criteria. If we don't want to send the email, then we can write some simple exclusion scripts and include them during the email send configuration. And now let's look at the resources. So you know what an AMPscript is, where it is used, and if you are getting ready to learn, so these are the different areas that you can get started with. So my first go-to place will be the Trailhead. So Trailhead has a great module. I think its code with AMPscript is the trail, which has all the relevant AMPscript modules. So it's good way to get started with the AMPscript, and it has all the basic information that is required. And the next one, this is my favorite, and it is the famous book written by Elliot Harper and Adam Spritz. So it has all the content that is related to the AMPscript, how to get started, and the different functions and different use cases. This is a great book to have. And another one is the documentation that is provided by the Salesforce. That is the AMPscript function reference guide. It has a list of all the functions, the purpose of each function, and the syntax of each function. So we're going to share this slide deck, and it has all the links to all the resources that we are sharing here. And so we get started with the AMPscript. So which tools can we use to easily learn AMPscript or easily code or debug AMPscript? So you can use the email studio, the content editor, the editor that comes within the email studio, but that is limited in ways that we cannot undo, or the code all seems in the same color. It's not easy to differentiate different functions and different variables that we have set. So these are the different editors. So to help you understand, I can go over the email. This is the email studio, and this is the content area that I can edit within the email studio. That when I'm creating the email, so this is the place where I'm including this content. So this is all plain. So this has very limited capabilities. I cannot undo or I cannot do much modifications, and I cannot see if I'm including the AMPscript in here. I cannot differentiate between the HTML code and the AMPscript code. So in order to make it more appealing, to make it easy to debug our code, we do have different tools that are available. One of them is the Sublime Editor, is one which I use regularly. The Sublime Editor, it also comes with a package that we can install, AMPscript Syntax Highlighter for Sublime. So I think this is written by Adam Spriggs. So when you install the Sublime Editor, you can install this package as well. So it is more, there are different options. You can even use it for the SSJS, the SQL, the HTML, and different formats. For AMPscript, using the syntax highlighter, it is more, it makes the functions and the variables more visible. It makes the functions stand out among the HTML code and other functions and other code in the AMPscript block. The other editor that is commonly used is the Visual Studio VS Code editor. So Visual, if you already used to Visual Studio VS Code, you can also install this package, the AMPscript Syntax Highlighter. So this serves the same purpose, as it highlights the AMPscript functions and other syntax. So this is like the add-on that you can install to the VS Code. And this one, the AMPscript.io, this is very helpful when you are writing some code and you want to debug the code as you write. So AMPscript.io, it does all the validation, or it validates all the syntaxes, and it highlights the content. So the functions stand out, the variables you can easily see, and also it helps you if any potential errors are there, it helps you with the warnings. And recently the analytics section is also added, where you can get a list of all the variables which weren't declared before. So you can copy those variables and then you set them, use them in the code. So this is created by Susanna. I'll take a break here and show what AMPscript does. So this is AMPscript.io. So on the left, I have this code. This is the default code that comes in. So here I will be writing my own code. So as I write my own code, it gives the analysis of the code, where any warnings or any all the variables that are set and all the functions that are being used. And let's say I do not set this variable. So in here, it should give me it gives me a list of all the variables. So I can copy this variable and I can say where, and I will copy this variable and use it here. So if I want to declare this variable prior, I can copy easily from this one. So we haven't gone through the variables part yet, but I'm going to cover in detail in the next few slides. But this AMPscript.io tool can help us with the syntax validation. So I have here the incorrect matching of the parentheses. I have removed one parenthesis here. So under the warnings, it's saying unmatched parentheses in line 18. And I'll try to make some more mistakes. So as I type, I get the details of the errors, potential errors that are included in the code. And I can correct here itself. And once I have this code ready, I can copy this over to my email and include it wherever I want to include that. So this is some helpful tool while you're learning and you want some help, like somebody validating your code and help you with correction. So you can use this tool. And other tool, that's my favorite, is the mcsnippets. For this one, mcsnippets, you wouldn't need an MC org access. So many people may not have, when they're beginning to learn Marketing Cloud, they may not have the Marketing Cloud instance. So mcsnippets is designed for those who doesn't have access to the Marketing Cloud. So how it works is, we first create the data extension. We create the data extension and we define all the fields that are to be present within the data extension. So we create the data extension in here, and using that data extension, we give a name here, and using that, we write some code. So this code can be AMPscript or SSJS, and recently SQL is also included in here. So we write the code here and we preview it here on the right side. We can run and to see what output it is giving. So as you are attending the sessions, if you don't have access to the Marketing Cloud, so what you can do is you can go here and see snippets and create your own data extension with your own fields and values. And then using that data extension, you can create your own logic. Maybe use the functions that we go over in each session, use the functions and try to play around with those functions, how the output is changing, what output is resulting. So you can explore all that using mcsnippets. And there is one Chrome extension, that is the Salesforce Marketing Cloud extension, Chrome extension. So this helps you in highlighting the code. So this is within the Email Studio content editor itself. So the other ones that I have shown, the Sublime editor or the VS Code editor, it comes with the AMPscript highlighter as well, but we need to copy the code outside the Marketing Cloud instance. And then once we are done with the editing, we copy back to the Marketing Cloud instance. But this Marketing Cloud Chrome extension, with this one, we can edit within the Email Studio itself, and it gives the code highlighting and any errors within the code. And also it auto completes the function names or the variable names, it auto completes, and it can be used for HTML, SSJS, and SQL. And further, if you want to learn more and explore, a huge shout out to Sabuhi, who have created this coding challenge. So you can register if you haven't already registered to this one. You can register. The link is ampscript30.com. So where is this one? Okay, this is the one, ampscript30.com. So this is the coding challenge where you register, and then you will get for every day you will get some challenge using some function. You have to you have to write some code that solves a use case. So you can register this one while you attend these sessions. We also encourage you to follow the content which are coming in these challenges. I'll go over the resources that I mentioned in the previous slide. This is the Trailhead module. So code with AMPscript is the module, and it has different, this is the trail, and it has different modules, AMPscript for marketers and AMPscript solutions, which will be helpful. And this is the reference guide. So we have this reference guide. I have included this link in the slide deck, so you can access this one. And it has a lot of content that is related to the AMPscript. So going by this function reference, so we have different function categories in here, the API functions, and then the context, the content, the data extension functions, the social functions, the date functions, the text string functions, utility functions, and so on. So we have split out this bootcamp as relevant to these function categories. So in each session, we're going to discuss about a few of these function categories. Let's say in the next session or in the other session, we're going to discuss about the date function or the data extension functions. So we have split out the bootcamp based on these function categories. And this is the AMPscript guide. You can buy this. It has all the information that is related to the AMPscript, and also it contains the syntax, the function detail. For each function, there is the syntax and use case listed. So it is a good resource to have. Coming back to the slides. So let's get into the content now. So we are well equipped with the tools and the resources to get started. Now let's get started. In the email studio, whenever you create an email, so there is some functionality available within the email studio to include some personalization strings. So I will quickly hop into the instance and show here. So this is my email. I have included some images in here, and I have included some content, that is the email body. And here I have simply said hello Trailblazer. So it doesn't have any personalization aspects. So Marketing Cloud, in the Marketing Cloud space, we give a lot of stress to the personalization in order to make connect with the subscriber, with the recipient or the customer. We have to make the email or the communications look in a way that they are more personalized, that they're talking to a human instead of to a machine. So in order to make them feel connected, we need to include some content that is more customized to that specific customer. So we will be using the first name and some attributes, different attributes, maybe their sponsorship level or the different stages they're in. Using their attributes that they have, the information, we can customize this email to make it more personal. So instead of saying a general message, hello Trailblazer, we can include here, hello first name. So the inbuilt out of the box personalization strings can be accessed here. So you have this person icon here. So when we click on this one, it will come up with a list of some attributes. There are some profile attributes and there are some system attributes. System attributes are more related to the system, like the email name, the job ID, member ID, and the subscriber key, and so on. And the profile attributes are more related to the profile. It can be something which already exists on the data extension. So I can choose which data extension has to get the values from. So I can select the data source here, and I will define which data extension can be used to get the data from. So I am mapping here one data extension which has all the content, all the data values. Click OK. So I can use all the attributes that are present within that data extension. So the profile ID, email address, first name, last name, state. So these are all the fields that are present on the this specific data extension. So I can use these. So I will say hello first name. So when I click on this one, it brings up the string. This is the personalization string. The personalization strings are encapsulated within the %. And we can use any of the relevant values here. So as I type here, hello, first name and last name, I'm done with the editing. So when I preview it, I'll be presented with the first name and the last name. Hello, Brandy the Fox. So this is the basic personalization that comes within the email studio. And next one is what we are discussing in detail here is the using the AMPscript personalization. So the benefit of using AMPscript is it helps us to personalize. That's the first benefit. But then it also helps to include complex logic and also include more functions to format the data or to manipulate the data, and many other functionalities we can do using the functions. And these personalization strings, they are profile based and the system based. And though they look like the AMPscript, now we haven't yet seen the syntax of the AMPscript yet, but the personalization strings resemble the AMPscript language as well, in the way that they are encapsulated within the % signs. So AMPscript also, we include the values or the script within the personalization strings. And these personalization strings can be used within the AMPscript function as well. So we're going to look at it in detail in the next slides. And these are the delimiters that are available in the AMPscript. So whenever we are trying to write an AMPscript code, we have to encapsulate it within the %%, and starting with the %% and ending with the %%. It's missing the % sign here, but it should be 2 % signs in the front and in the end. If it is containing a multiple number of lines, so this has different lines set within the block, we call it AMPscript block. So in the AMPscript block, we do multiple steps. In the first one, we are declaring the variable and then setting the variable and also displaying, outputting some content. So we use these blocks when we want to include some logic and include some processing, data processing, and we want to set the variables and do more functionality within. So we can include multiple lines here and then start with the square bracket and end with the square bracket %%. And then if we just want to output, we just want to execute one simple function. So we don't need to write this block. It can be just a function call. So we can use %% equal to. So we use this when we simply want to output. Let's say we have the first name all in uppercase. We want to format it. So we may use the function proper case and then a proper case of first name. So we can include that within the %% equal to signs. So if we're just writing some simple code, then we're going to use the inline AMPscript. So both necessarily does the same purpose, but for simplicity purposes, so if it is a single line, we encapsulate within %% equal to. If it is a multiple lines, if it is a block, we're going to include it within %% bracket signs. And the AMPscript tag is another way where if we want to include more complex logic, and if you are already aware of some of the scripting language like JavaScript and so on, if you are more comfortable writing this as a script, then you can use these tags, script run it equals to server and language equals to AMPscript, and include all the code that you want to execute within. So these are the different ways, but the most commonly used are the AMPscript block and the inline AMPscript. And how do we set the variables? So in order for us to personalize, or if let's say in the previous example, we are using hello first name. So if we are using that with the AMPscript, the first name, that variable has to be set and it has to be declared. So we use the variables to store the data within the AMPscript block or the inline AMPscript. So the variables, they begin with the @ symbol. And if we want to declare them, we use var. And if we want to set them with some value, we use set at variable name and var at variable name. And if we want to give them any value, so it could be any value. So when we are declaring, we are not defining any data type. So whatever value type, data type that we give, give in the set statement is the value that it gets. And the language is case insensitive. So the variable names or the values that you give, it's all insensitive. The function names that you use, it's all case insensitive. And these variable names need to be unique. So if you are using the same variable and setting it, since it is top-down processing, the last value which is set is the one that is preserved. So make sure that you are giving unique names to the variables. And for the comments, we can simply include them within slash and star symbols. And the strings can be encapsulated within double quotes or the single quote. And the functions, so we can call these functions within the AMPscript block or the inline AMPscript. As we have seen here, we can simply call the function. If it is just one function call, we can use %% equal to and call the function. These are the different function categories that are available. The API functions, the context, the content. The data extension functions is the most commonly used. The data extension, date, time, and the Salesforce function if we are manipulating the data from the Salesforce. The string functions and the utility functions are the ones that are most commonly used. So data extension functions, they help us to get the data from a specific data extension. And also we can execute some logic depending on the data value. And then we can also write back to the data extension using these functions. Similarly, we can use the datetime functions to output some values or to include some logic using the date values and so on. So these are different function categories. We are going to look at each of them in detail in the next following sessions. And these are the different operators that are available whenever we are setting some variables. We use equal to when setting the variable. And when we are comparing some values, so if one value is equal to or not, if it is less than, so in the conditional logic, when we are executing some code, let's say, take the example of the dynamic content. If you are aware of the dynamic content block, we set some criteria. If the state is California, then display this image. If the state is Massachusetts, then display the other image. The same way, we can include some logic within the AMPscript using these operators. For the numbers and for the text, depending on the data type, these operators are available. Equal to is used to check if the value equals, and not equals to is used to check if it is not equal. And similarly, all the other greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to are used as applicable. And if we want to combine the logic together, two different statements together, and we have these logical operators and an or. And if you want to negate, if you want to reverse the output, then we'll use not. And the order of the operations, we have already seen that AMPscript is a top-down procedural language. But within a single block, it first starts with the pre-header. So in the email, the pre-header is the one that gets executed, and then the HTML body, and then the text body. Within the HTML body, the text body, and then at the last, the subject line will be evaluated. So the AMPscript can be included within the subject line as well, the pre-header as well, and in the text body as well. So let's take a break here and then look at an example. So I have this email created. And earlier I have used the personalization strings. I can take it off, and I want to use the AMPscript here, hello, and AMPscript inline function, this one, person equals to. And v is a function that is used to get the value of an attribute. So I will show you the data extension, what attributes it contains and what values it contains. So in here, I have included this value from the data extension. So this has the profile ID, email address, the first name, last name, state, and applied. So when I'm using the value that is already present in the same in the data extension that is mapped, I can use the same ID, same attribute name, and since it has some space in between, I'm using the square brackets here. When I preview this, it says hello, first name, and I can change the recipient here. So it keeps changing depending on the recipient. So whoever the recipient is, it gets the first name value from the data extension for that specific recipient that is mapped. So it gets the value and keeps changing for each recipient. And if you want to try this out, so we can go to the AMPscript editor and then look at the warnings and the respective variables which may not have been set, the functions which may be a incorrect syntax as well. I would like to pause here and see if there are any questions. Okay, so switching back to this one. So that's how we get started with the AMPscript, and these are all the basic operators that are available. And if we want to execute some logic, if let's say we want to say for the people whose maybe first name is equals to Brandy, then include some content. Brandy, we are so excited to see you here, or something like that, some content which is more specific to Brandy. And if the name is Kova, we want to switch the content up. And if we want to change the content up, maybe the text or the image or something. So in that case, we can include the if then condition. So if then syntax is, if you are already aware of other scripting languages or other languages, development languages, you may be well aware with the if then syntax, if then statements. So it comes with the if condition. If the condition happens is true, then the next condition is executed, and end if is like a closing of the if loop. As you see here in the right example, we have here if at line. At line is the variable that we have declared, and we are using the operator equals equals. If the variable contains the value apparel, and if it equals the string which is given here, then execute some set of code. So we'll get to this code later, but then execute some set of code. If not, else execute some other set of code, and then end if. So we have this if, else, and end if. And within this if, else, and end if, we have nested if statement again. If, else, end if. So if this can be nested, and we can include multiple if, else statements. And also, if you want to check multiple if conditions, let's say if one condition, if that doesn't match, if we are looking at different condition, if that matches, we can use else if. So if shoe size is less than 5, then do this, or else if it doesn't match, but if matches less than or equals to 8, then do the next step, execute the next statement. Or else, if none of the above else if conditions, if and else if conditions match, then execute the else condition and then end if. End if is like closing the if loop. So this is the basic syntax. So if and then this is basically used to execute some logic based on whether a criteria is met or not. So this is the simple conditions that we use within the AMPscript to check on the criteria matches or not, and then execute some code. So when you are starting to create these if and if then conditions, start with a simple if then statement, add the else statement later, and then else if statement, or maybe some nested if statements later on. As you progress, keep adding more blocks, more content to it, but this recommendation is to not create the whole content, so it's hard to debug. So you can start with few lines of if else conditions, and then include more logic into that later. And if you can also make use of the tools, the highlighter tools that we have, the Sublime and the VS Code, so to properly know how they look like. So this is the Sublime editor that we have here. So as you see here, I have this code. This is the HTML code, and this is basically the email content. As you see here, this is all the HTML head and the body. Within this HTML, I am going to include this AMPscript functions. So where what I'm doing is % square brackets, because this is the whole block of code within the HTML content. So the AMPscript, whatever I'm including, I'm encapsulating it within square brackets. And at the very beginning, I set all the variables. I declare all the variables that I'm going to use. And I'm setting the values for each variable. And for each variable where I am getting the values is through some functions. These functions we are going to discuss in the next sessions. But these values are set using some functions. And when we are done, we are closing it with square brackets %. And within the code, let's say this is the table row and table data. In the data, I want to display some value. So this is % equals to the value of some variable at the rate. And this is the variable that we have declared and we set the value. And we are outputting the value of this variable here within this table data. So wherever we want to include that data, we can include those set values. And at the beginning, we can set the values and we can use those values wherever it's appropriate. And in the Sublime Editor, we can use this for viewing the syntax of all the other languages as well. So when I work on SQL, I select the SQL code here. Let's say I'm working on the HTML code. So in the HTML code, I'll go and select the syntax as HTML. And if I'm working on the AMPscript, then I'll go here and select the syntax as AMPscript. And there is this AMPscript highlighter, which I have already installed. I have this here. So this is AMPscript. And there will be a slight difference, but AMPscript highlighter does help in viewing the functions more clear. So it highlights the AMPscript functions. So it is a good tool to use. And I will switch the screen share to my other one. So whenever you're writing these if statements or writing some complex code, I would suggest you to use some editors or at least use the Google Chrome extension, the Salesforce Marketing Cloud Chrome extension. So which can help you to identify the beginnings, help you identify the syntax mistakes, highlight the code, and so on. And next useful statement is the for loops. We are going to discuss each of these in detail with the use case in the next session, but this is just to give you an overview of what each one does. So you have easy reference when we are discussing that within some functions. You have easy reference. So the for loops are used to loop through in order to execute the same block of code multiple times. We can use the for loop. And we will set a value of the for loop. It's a mistake here. It's not nested if it's a for loop. So we can set some value and then we can increase the value every time we run the loop. And we can until the value becomes reaches a certain value, increasing or decreasing value. So until it reaches some specific value, we can continue to execute the loop for those number of times. So on the right is the syntax. For we set the variable to some expression. So let's say we can give the expression as a numeric constant. So for some var equals to 10, and we can go on down to 1, from 10 to 1. So keep decreasing the number, variable number, and then keep executing the loop. So if it is down to, it keeps decreasing. If it is 2, it increases the count. So it does the same, but it's the decreasing or the increasing of the value that we use in the expression. So these expression values can be a numeric constant or some value that comes within the data extension. We can start with the row number 1 in the data extension and then loop until the last record in the data extension. We can set that, and we can also set it to some variable or use a function here as well. Variable equals to function of some maximum of the record count and something, we can use this. And if that condition is met, like the variable is matching the expression, like let's say we set the variable to 10 and keep decreasing until it matches the number, keep decreasing to 1 or 2, until it matches, it keeps executing some line of code that we have here under the do statement. So here we will include some lines of code to execute if that condition is met. And then it loops, it gives, it increments or decrements to continue execution of the for loop. So if you're already aware of any other coding language, then it's easy to understand the nested if and the for loops. We are going to look at the use cases and the examples of these in the next session. And this is also one of the important function that we will be using regularly. It's the value of function. It gives the value of the variable. So whatever variable that we use here, it gives, it outputs the value of that. So whenever we are using this value of, make sure that there are no spaces, and it should have the equal to sign in the beginning and at the end. So this is like a primer. We have the basic information. Next sessions will be more about each of these functions. We'll start with the utility functions, and then the data extension functions, the date functions, and we'll progress towards the sites, Salesforce functions, and the API functions, and so on. So after this session, so we almost reached the end of the session. We will leave some time for the Q&A. So after this session, we would highly recommend you to set this up. If you are learning the AMPscript for the first time, explore the tools that we have mentioned before. So go through this trailhead trail, and this reference guide, you can hold it for the next sessions. As we discuss these functions, you can refer to these. And you can play around with the code using this AMPscript.io and see if there are any errors. And AMPscript 30 challenge is something which I highly recommend you to register for. So these are all the handy tools that we have. Please follow all this content. We'll be sharing the recording of this one and the slide deck as well. Please go through all this one. So as we go through each of these functions, we also encourage you to try it out on your Marketing Cloud instance, even during the session or after the session. Please definitely try using those functions and play around with those functions. And if you have any questions, if you run into any problem, we have the Slack channel open, so you can collaborate with us on the Slack channel. Any questions or anything that you have? I'm going to look at the chat here. The Visual Studio editor can be connected to the Marketing Cloud. I don't think the Sublime Text Editor can be connected to the Marketing Cloud. Visual Studio can be connected to the Marketing Cloud, that's for sure. Yes, mcsnippet is the only way. If you do not have access to the Marketing Cloud instance, then mcsnippets is the way to explore with the code. And thanks everyone for joining. Any other questions? And Tim, you want to add anything here?
No, that was amazing, JB. What an amazing overview. Those tools are just fantastic. I learned a lot.
I try to do my best, Tim. So I think we do not have any questions here. But the next sessions are going to have a lot of content. This is like the primer, the introduction. It has all the tools for you to get started. So we highly recommend you to register to all the sessions and follow along. Thank you very much, everyone. And we hope to see you again in the next session.